Hello, welcome to the A to Z YouTube channel. My name is Toby Allen and I am the A in A to Z. I'm in charge of all things engineering and producing when it comes to bands coming into the studio to record with us. So with that in mind, one of the things I'm in charge of is guitar tones. So we're going to be looking at some amps. And today we are looking at the Crab Effects Marcus III. Let's start by hearing it in the context of a song. So that was a little bit savage. I think it did the job for that tone. So you may have seen the name Crab Guitar Effects knocking around in some of the Facebook groups. Some people have seen a few people sharing pictures of these, and other people asking questions like, are they any good? Should I go for them? Who are they? Blah, blah, blah. Basically, Crab Guitar Effects is a guitar amp and pedal manufacturer who is based in Ukraine. It's a one-man operation at the moment. Because of the way that the exchange rate works and because of the cost of living in Ukraine, etc., he's actually able to make these very cheaply, but very, very high quality. So when you look at the actual build of these and the sound coming out of them, it is phenomenal. They are sounding like amps that should be worth a lot more than what he's selling them for. So that is a win-win for everyone, really. So this one is the Marcus III. It's based on the Mesa Boogie Mark III, which is a unique series of amps because the way that the controls are laid out is very different to a lot of other amps on the market. They've got a very unique sound, and so they're probably made famous by their use by Metallica, of course. So Metallica used Mark III amps on Master of Puppets and Justice for All. They used Mark amps on Black Album as well. So yeah, they've got a good pedigree. Other bands that have used them would include, just off the top of my head, I'm thinking of Dream Theater, Lamb of God. I'm completely spacing, but there's lots of other bands as well. And yeah, they are very, very great sounding amps. They are a little bit intimidating to use and to dial in because the controls are very different to most other amps on the market. And you've probably seen that since Mesa has been bought out by Gibson, they have recently reissued the Mark II. So a lot of interest at the moment around this series of amps, so I thought it was a good time for us to talk about this amp in particular. And the great thing is, because of, as I said, the cost is very low. I paid, including shipping and customs, import, duty, etc., it was less than £500. So if you look at the reissue, they're close to £3,000. If you look at getting one of these off of Reverb used, you're looking at sort of £5,000 or more, depending on the condition and the market at the time. Of course, because of the exchange rate and everything, Crab's guitar effects are not set in stone. They do fluctuate based on the exchange rate. Anyway, all of that aside, let's have a listen to some of the tones out of it. I want to explain how the controls work. So straight off, of course you have got a 3-band EQ like you have on most amps, but the differences between this amp and most other amps is that this is actually based before any gain, any distortion, any drive, any dirt, whatever word you want to use. This is set before those. The gain is a clean gain, which is going into the front of the amp. So you can kind of think of this section here as being like a boost pedal in front of the amp. So normally I would set EQ to noon and then tweak from there, or perhaps even set them all to 6 and then tweak from there. That's not how you go with this one, and we'll come back to that in a bit. You've also got separate gain here for, this is what you would normally think of as your gain, so that will actually affect the drive and the distortion and the dirt, etc. The higher that goes, that on the lead channel, that will then bring in your distortion. You've got a separate level knob here for the lead channel. you've got a master volume here for the whole amp, but you've got a separate one here for the lead channel. The lead channel comes in way louder than the other two channels, so that is actually quite useful if you want to be able to switch between different channels. At a gig, for example, you can set this quite low, set the master up quite high, and then you'll have kind of an even kind of volume change when you change channel. Master and presence are pretty much exactly as you'd expect on as with any controls on any amp. So you've essentially got your volume, and presence is another high-end control. It uses the power amp stage to enable that. Then you've got the graphic EQ here. This reacts a little bit more closely to how you expect your EQ on your amp to work. The difference being this is actually an active EQ section, not a passive one. So on most amps, when your bass, middle and treble are actually cuts and not boosts, there's no boost in that circuit. Here, if you have these set to 0, that is not doing anything. If you go up, it's actually boosting, and if you go down, it's actually cutting. So that is a little bit different to the EQs on most amps, but in terms of controls and what you can expect to get out of that, it is closer. I hope that makes sense. You'll notice most people, when they're using one of these amps or an amp in this series, the graphic EQ tends to have a kind of V kind of shape, because that is the most pleasing sound out of that. Essentially the mid is pretty much okay. On this one at least, you do see some people cut the mid quite a lot, but it tends to be that the bass and the treble want some boost. And that is it for the knobs. You've also got some switches on here as well. So we've got a bright switch here, which makes it more bright. And there's two bright switches in fact, and they actually work on two different channels. If memory serves me correctly, then this one serves the first two channels, which is your clean and your crunch, and this one serves your lead channel. Shift makes tweaks to the EQ in the mid-range. Then you've got this switch here, which switches between rhythm 1 and rhythm 2, and this one goes to your lead channel. So essentially, when you choose this one, it goes straight to the lead channel. No matter what this one here is set to, you go to the lead. And then when you turn it off, it'll go to whichever channel this one is set to. Then you've got deep, which is kind of the equivalent of an on-off resonance control. So instead of having a resonance knob, you've got a resonance switch. So this basically brings in a ton of low end. If you look at the original manual for the real Mark III, made by Mesa, then you'll see that this is actually... in the manual, it says designed if you're using a Strat or single coils. That'll get you a deeper sound, that kind of more balanced compared to a humbucker, if that makes sense. And then you've got EQ here. So at the moment we've got the switch off, so that you can actually enable and disable the EQ section over here. So at the moment we're running an Epiphone Les Paul. We'll be changing to a different guitar in a little bit as well. And we're going into channel 1, which is the clean channel, and that sounds like this. Pretty nice, very sparkly, very nice. That's on the neck pickup. On the bridge pickup, yep, there you go. That's your clean channel. If we go any further, this is the gain at the moment is on about 9 o'clock. It does get a bit crunchy when you take that to full. That is essentially like putting a clean boost into the front of a clean amp and taking it into breakup territory. And again, you've got these are set before the amp. So if we bring this up a bit, we've got the treble. And pretty much, if you have all these off, there's pretty much no sound coming through. And then the bass. So you notice that basically once you hit about 10 o'clock, it just starts getting really boomy. And then middle. Again, it's pretty boomy. Really, like most of the time, you'll have these, particularly on the drive channels, you'll have these, like the treble up and the bass in the middle, down to maybe nothing. And then do all your EQ work over here. So, the shift, let's see what the shift does. Oh, hang on, let's do the bright first. off. It's quite subtle. Shift. So you can hear it doing things in the mid and the lower mids. Yeah, so you've got some more tonal options there. Let's move over to, oh, hang on, let's just put the EQ on as well. EQ on. EQ off. On. Off. It's kind of subtle on the cleaner channels. So if we move over to rhythm 2. Kind of slightly driven Marshall kind of tone, I guess. Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I don't use those channels whatsoever. I pretty much just exclusively live on the third channel, which is this one here. And I'm going to switch over to my EMG guitar. Alright, so now we're on EMG guitar. This is a LTD EX50 with an 81 in the bridge. We're running 12 to 60 NYXL strings on here, and this is in drop C. So we're over on the lead channel, and like I say, this is pretty much where I live when I'm using this amp. I don't really bother with the other channels. So let's go through. I'm going to work through the EQ going into the front of the amp first, so you can hear how that sounds. So at the moment we have the bass and the middle and the bass turned off, and the treble is at about 3 o'clock. Because that's the only EQ knob that's on, you'll notice that when you turn the treble down and up, it actually affects the gain quite a lot, because essentially you are just turning on and off, because that's the only thing that is actually running. So that's something that can be a little bit finicky to begin with. So essentially, if you're wanting to have like less treble, still have the same amount of gain, you need to turn this down and then this one up. Like. So let's put the treble back down to nothing, and we'll do just the bass. Yeah, that's far too woofy. We don't need that. On its own, that sounds gross. Now the middle. Again, middle sounds pretty woofy as well. So if we just bring the treble up to, let's say, noon. Bring a little bit of bass. And then a bit of middle. Problem is when you do any of those, and this is why I pretty much leave these on almost nothing at all, is that it just gets really, really flubby and muddy. So we leave the middle and the bass on nothing and the treble up. So it sounds tight, but now it's losing a bit of that low end. So the next thing we'll do is we'll try the shift switches. That definitely sounds better with it on. We'll try the second one. It gives a little bit more snarl and a bit more nastiness to it, which I like. So we'll leave those on. So next we're going to move across to the bright switch. quite subtle, but I'll leave that on. I quite like that. And then lastly, let's turn the EQ on. And wow, it comes to life. So let's just put the EQ down to nothing. It's got a little sort of click when it's at the middle position. You can kind of feel it. Even on 0, it still does something. It still actually brings in a little bit more volume for one thing. I'm going to move these faders. I'm basically going to chug and move the fader and show what it does. So that is really extreme, very powerful control, and that's because it's an active control. Move over to the next one. So again, it sounds great with a little bit of boost on there, not too much. And I'll go through the middle now. I think even with it cut right down to the bottom, that still sounds quite cool, but it sounds a bit extreme. Sounds, I mean, for nu metal, for some kind of thrash, yeah. For me, I do like a little bit of mids, so we've got a tiny bit of a cut, but not too much. Next. Again, likes a little bit of boost on that, but if we go too far on that, it gets really fizzy and nasty. And then the last one. And you can see once again, we've ended up at that V shape that is pretty consistent. When you see pictures of people using these amps, that EQ section is almost always in that kind of V formation. Which, you know, sounds great. And if you look at the pictures of that, I can never remember his name, the guy who engineered Master of Puppets, he actually has all his original notes from that era, and on his website you can actually find those and download them and look at them. But he's actually drawn out where the position, he's got all the knobs and everything, and it is quite similar to what I've got here. That's not me copying that, that's just, it happens to be a good kind of tone. He's got a little bit more cut on the mids, there's a little bit different on the EQ. The EQ is actually slightly different on each song as well, which is interesting. And I really feel like with this amp, you do need to, there isn't really kind of a set and forget kind of position on this one. You kind of do want to tweak it for every guitar, for every song, for every guitarist, to get the tone that works best with it. So yeah, it's can be a little bit finicky to mess with in terms of dialing in, but I think once you're there, I think we can agree that it sounds fantastic. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this video and me checking out this guitar amp. If you do like what you've seen, give us a cheeky thumb and a subscribe, and we'll see you next time.